In business today, three things to know. First, the rebuilding of housing stocks. Strong sales numbers translates into a rebounding market for investors. But what are the warning signs ahead? Then, jump ball for the Clippers. A proposal is on the table to allow Donald Sterling's wife to sell the team. The NBA, however, rejects the offer and says, game over. And traffic jam. After a brutal winter, Americans appear ready to take their travel dollars to the beaches this Memorial Day weekend. Arise Exchange for this Friday starts now. Hello, everyone. I'm Andrew Schmertz. Better than expected sales of new homes propelled the S&P 500 to a record close on somewhat light volume just before the long Memorial Day weekend. The Commerce Department reports that April sales increased 6.4% to an annual rate of 433,000 units. That's about 10,000 units better than consensus. That ended two straight months of declines. Breaking it down by region, sales in the Midwest hit their highest level since November of 2007. Sales also rose in the South, but were flat in the West. The Northeast bucked the trend, recording the worst numbers since October of 2012. On Wall Street, any news moved the market since most investors took the day off and headed to the Hamptons and other places like the Hamptons. Very light volume today. So let's take a look at the final numbers. The Dow Jones Industrial Average closed at 16,606, up 63.19. The S&P 500 pushed over the 1,900 mark. That's a record to 1,953. And the NASDAQ up 31.47 to 41.85.81. Some of the top stocks we're watching today, the Wall Street Journal reporting that Google is developing a tablet capable of tracking environments in 3D. And says it could be released ahead of the company's developer conference in June. Google closing up $879 to $564. Amazon is offering a new promotion, letting users try its new $99 Fire TV for a free 30-day trial. The company says it will send an email to eligible participants who are Amazon users. Amazon closing up $726 to $312.17. And Apple removes a marijuana dealing game application from its App Store. The game, called Weed Firm, lets players walk in the shoes of a pot dealer and dodge crooked cops, according to the game maker. Do we need Apple to be the nanny company? Why do they do this? It's up nearly 7 points, though, to 614.20. Apple on a bit of a tear lately. Looking at commodities, gold closing down and oil up 61 cents to 104.35 a barrel. With improved home sales, is it time to give home building stocks a second look? Or are the numbers really not so strong? Tim Ghriskey is Chief Investment Officer of the Solaris Group. He joins us now. Tim, welcome back to Arise Exchange. Thanks for spending a few minutes with us this Memorial Day weekend.
Absolutely, Andrew. Good to be with you.
Taking a look at the home sale numbers, we've had two straight days of pretty decent numbers. You know, your interpretation of what's going on?
Well, we did have good new home sales numbers today, above expectations, and the prior period was also revised up. We've got a big week next week with the Case-Shiller Home Price Index on Tuesday, consumer confidence on Tuesday, and then Thursday pending home sales. So we're going to start to see a lot of housing data here. You know, we've been through a very tough winter in the states, and really pretty much across the entire country, and that really depressed sales and building of homes.
So we're looking at some pretty comparable numbers, but when you look at it compared to a year ago, for those of us with a little bit longer term memory, the numbers are still pretty weak, aren't they?
They sure are. We're not building houses like we have in past recoveries. It's been very slow. The prices have increased. We've seen a nice bounce back there, but home sales in general are weak. But you know, there are good signs. Inventories are low. We think we've gotten the speculators out of the market, those buying for cash, looking for a quick flip. And, you know, now we're into the real home buyers, and unfortunately, household formations aren't happening. And employment isn't that strong, and there's certainly underemployment, too. So house buying is still going to be an issue.
Yeah, I want to ask you about that. We keep hearing it resonate now that investors are starting to get out of the market, and that's why we've seen a little bit of softening, but that also could be a good sign so we know what the real housing market looks like. Are there specific areas of this market that you like the most for investors, not for home buyers?
Well, I think, given that the single-family housing market is still going to have some headwinds here, we prefer the multifamily, and we also, like apartments and the rental market. And although it's probably late in the apartment game, we think multifamily is a good place to be, and we think apartments are going to be, decent here as well. And there's certainly a number of REITs that you could play to invest in those areas.
Yeah, and later in the program, we're actually going to talk about how the rental market is looking a little bit stronger than the home buying market, and people are moving into rentals. Specific stocks, because we've seen the stocks sort of like Toll Brothers, for example, hit new highs in March and have pulled back a little bit significantly since then. Are there any specific stocks that you like here?
Yeah, in terms of home builders, it would be probably Beazer Homes, BZH, is the symbol. And it really is leveraged to the first-time home buyer and the first upgrade home buyer. So if we do see some life in the housing market, that's probably where it's going to come from. In terms of REITs, equity residential in the apartment sector, we like that. And then Essex Property Trust in the multifamily residence market, especially on the West Coast. We like that as well.
And of course, REITs kind of spread the risk out a little bit better for retail investors, don't they?
Exactly, and they provide a nice level of income as well, and we think steady gains in that income in the years ahead.
Okay, Tim Ghriskey, Chief Investment Officer from the Solaris Group. Have a good Memorial Day weekend, Tim. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Andrew.
Late today, the National Basketball Association said thanks, but no thanks to an offer from Los Angeles Clippers owner Donald Sterling to allow his wife to negotiate and sell the team. The league says it will proceed with a forced sale of the franchise. Sterling made the offer, apparently believing there is little chance he can hold on following racist remarks he made to a girlfriend. Sports analyst and Oppenheimer and company executive director Stephen Colavito joins us now from Atlanta with the latest. Good afternoon to you, Stephen. What did Sterling first propose today, and why did the NBA reject it?
Well, the proposal actually is working between Donald Sterling and Shelley Sterling, and this is interesting in a couple of different fronts. First, it's the first admission by Donald Sterling that he's not going to be able to keep the team. Publicly, he said that he was going to fight the NBA. This is a white flag that he's not going to be able to keep the team. He knows he's got no real legal recourse. But he's giving up control to Shelley Sterling, who now is going to try to negotiate a deal with the league. And really now the fight begins between the NBA and the Sterlings on control of the sale, because the NBA wants to force the sale. The Sterlings would like to have some time to allow investors to kind of build up before they have to sell the team. Yeah,
and a forced sale would theoretically depress the price, right? It's similar like to owning a co-op in New York City. If you're forced to sell it, you don't get what you want.
That's correct. And Forbes has the team as of the beginning of this year at a value of about $575 million, which is significant. But if you have enough bidders, there have been numbers bantered around about $1 billion. So it takes time for investors to raise capital, to build pools of capital. Investment bankers want to come in and they want to have the deal shop. So by having control of the sale, it gives the Sterlings the ability to maybe raise the value ultimately for the team.
Yeah, no matter what, they're going to be doing pretty well in this sale. There had been some speculation that Shelley Sterling, they're separated. If she files for divorce in California, there was speculation that this whole thing could come to a halt.
Yes, and I think they have an interesting relationship to begin with, but they're still married, and she had 50% controlling interest of the team. Now she's got control. So it was an interesting dynamic. I think that, again, both the Sterlings realize that they're going to have to be joined at the hip on this. Shelley had indicated to the NBA that she'd like to keep a minority interest. I think the NBA and the players are going to reject that. So at this point, I think both the Sterlings are going to work together in order to try to, again, take control of the sale. But I'm not sure that the NBA is going to give them that kind of latitude.
How quick can the sale then happen if the NBA forces the sale?
Well, the officials that I've talked to, basically, they want this thing done before the season starts next year. The players want it done even before that. So I think that generally speaking, we're probably looking at, I think now 4 or 5 months before the league, well, we got to finish this season, but we have about 4 or 5 months before the league starts again. So you're looking at probably September, October before, in a time frame that the deal gets done.
For different reasons, both Major League Baseball and the National Hockey League have taken over franchises from owners. Is there a scenario here that the NBA may be considering this as an interim move?
Well, I think that the way that Commissioner Silver has handled this has been absolutely perfect in the sense that he's put the Sterlings in a bit of a box, in the sense from a legal maneuver perspective. They could have taken this to arbitration. I think that, again, the way that he's maneuvered this, he's not giving them any wiggle room. The question will be, again, is of timing. And I think the fight now comes in is, will the Sterlings be able to retain control of the sale? And what the timing of that will be. And by this maneuver today, the Sterlings actually have kind of postured themselves well, because if the league forces a sale, then the Sterlings could come back into federal court and ultimately say, wait a minute, we're allowed time to sell this team over a reasonable amount of time. We're not being granted that. Our value's depressed. We've got a case.
Well, especially,
it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, especially if it looks like the NBA is now just taking punitive action and not necessarily making an economic decision here.
Well, and I think that the commissioner realizes that he wants this issue to go away quickly. He wants it to be smooth. Shelley Sterling has been in talks with the league over the last couple of weeks with her representatives to try to work out some agreement. So there are discussions, and I think that those will go on. June 3rd is kind of the magical date where the league will come out and basically officially force sale. So there's still a couple of weeks for something to be negotiated. This deal today between the Sterlings at least allows the ball to move forward, because they were not going to talk to Donald Sterling at all.
Any idea of who may buy the team?
There's a long list of folks in Hollywood that would love to put their names on the team and sit courtside. I think that Magic Johnson, certainly after his partnership with the Dodgers, is probably a pretty good choice. But there's private equity firms. I mean, there's going to be a laundry list of folks that probably step up. This is a great franchise. It has been turned around over the last couple of years. The value's gone up, and it's in LA, so it's a prime spot for an NBA team.
Dick Parsons, the former CEO of Time Warner, my former boss way up the chain, is now in charge of the team. Will he stick around?
I think so. I don't think that. I think that if you look at the management side of this, they've handled this situation well. It's really just been on the ownership side that it's been a debacle, and I think that the league has been good about separating managers and players and coaches versus ownership.
Yeah.
And so I would anticipate that he stays around if he wants to. I haven't heard anything that would indicate otherwise.
In many ways, this league has done a better job of that than, say, other teams and other leagues. Stephen Colavito, thank you so much.
Have a great weekend, Andrew.
Coming up, should you ditch owning a home and rent? It's a financial decision that now might make sense. You're watching Arise Exchange.
If I was building my own news network, first thing I think I'd want high-quality reporters, very educated, intelligent people.
Hello, I'm Francesca Maxime.
I'm Julian Phillips.
I'm Wendy Gillette.
I'm Sophia Song Hai.
I'm Gary Anthony Ramsey. Thank you for joining us here in New York City.
I would like to see more people of color represented in high positions in media.
We've got world-class journalists, veteran journalists who have been in this industry for decades, not just in front of the camera, but behind the scenes as well.
People need to understand the problems that are going on in the community are much closer than we actually think they are.
Kayla Phillips is one of the shoppers who is suing Barney's, and she is here with her attorney. What is it that you want from them?
Not to judge every African-American person that comes in your store.
Welcome back to Arise Exchange. Time now for our business ticker, stories making news around the world. Hewlett-Packard plans to cut up to an additional 16,000 jobs. That's on top of the 34,000 layoffs it has already announced. The computer giant, shrinking giant, says the latest cuts would be across all its business units and geographic locations and would generate $1 billion in annual savings. GM's recall parade could last into the summer. So says a new research report from Barclays Capital. After meeting with GM senior management, Barclays said the investigation by the automaker's new safety team will likely bring more recall requests, but it hopes to be done by midsummer. GM has issued more recalls this year than ever before. There have been 29 separate recalls covering close to 16 million vehicles worldwide. Both Spain and Greece have been upgraded by two different credit ratings agencies. Standard & Poor's boosted Spain's credit rating to BBB from BBB- with a stable outlook. S&P followed two other major ratings agencies, Moody's and Fitch, in upgrading Spain's ratings after years of turbulence. And Greece's ratings also upgraded. Fitch upgraded it from a B- to B as the country reached its first primary surplus since the start of the 2009 crisis. Former U.S. Federal Reserve Chairman Ben Bernanke is going to bat for a new job. He wants to be Commissioner of Baseball. According to the New York Times, Bernanke would like to succeed Bud Selig as Commissioner of Major League Baseball. Bernanke is known for his love of the game and is a big Washington Nationals fan. The former Fed chair is currently in residence at the Brookings Institute. And if you're in the market for a nice home, the Lake Tahoe Hideaway, formerly owned by reclusive billionaire Howard Hughes, is up for sale. The 4-bedroom, 5-bath log cabin style estate, which sits on 5.5 acres on the Nevada side of Lake Tahoe, is on the market for $19.5 million. The property has only changed hands once since Hughes bought it in the 1950s. And speaking of buying or renting, whether to rent or buy a home is one of the biggest financial decisions most of us will ever make in our lives. So which makes more sense? To talk more about this issue between renting and buying is Pej Barlavi, CEO of Barlavi Realty. Pej, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Xchange. So, we've been reporting about all of these new home sales going on. You're starting to see a shift towards rental markets.
Yes, as the summertime approaches, the rental market becomes very active. Colleges are they're closing, and students need places. Homeowners that have sold their homes early in the year are now moving out and looking for an apartment.
Are you seeing people sell their homes, put some cash in the bank, and renting?
Yeah, actually, the market is really high for sellers right now, especially in Manhattan and the 5 or 6 major cities. So they're cashing out, waiting for the next bubble to burst and get back into it again.
That's kind of tricky, though, timing the market, isn't it?
Very tricky.
What is sort of driving this desire? Because we're reading a bunch of stories about how people are doing exactly that. And you're taught that's always better to own than rent because renting is kind of throwing away money.
Absolutely.
So why sort of this rotation out of buying?
If people need the money right now, they want to reinvest it into their business. So if they can cash out at a high price, invest it in their business, and then come back into purchasing a home, it's always a good option for doing that if they don't want to take the equity back out of their home and getting a second mortgage.
As a real estate broker, what do you like to do better? Rent apartments or sell apartments or homes? I think apartments is in New York City.
Renting is the bread and butter of our company. We've done probably 200-300 rentals a year. But for me, I love sales.
Yeah, that's an interesting kind of statement because in rental you get 2 months fee these days?
About 15% of the year's rent.
Okay, so that's substantially less, though, than in a sale, though the transactions happen quicker, I imagine.
Much quicker.
As far as those going into the rental market, is there a specific age group that jumps into the rental market?
No, there isn't. If you're looking at the major markets, New York, LA, San Francisco, Miami, there isn't. And with the high rents right now, you're looking at $32, on average, $3,200 a month for just a 1-bedroom in New York. It's pretty high.
Is it true that rents and prices of homes sort of move in opposite directions?
They do, especially when you calculate where the interest rate is. That definitely drives, that gives that nudge whether you're going to purchase or whether you're going to go into rent.
And so as we start to see higher interest rates, you expect more people to go into the rental market?
Absolutely, especially if the sales prices don't start to average out and come down a little bit.
So is there a formula that someone who is thinking right now as to whether they should buy or rent that they could do in their head about salary and about cost and about interest rates that you kind of help guide people on in trying to make that decision?
Yeah, we always say try to stick to about 30 to 35% of your salary should go towards your mortgage. That's about a safe bet. If something happens 3-4 months, if you're not working or if you fall ill, that you have at least that money to pay your mortgage out. The rental, you just got to be able to know the area you're going to live in, the neighborhood, price it out, see what the rental market is, and see whether or not it's going to be to your benefit, whether you're going to rent or you're going to buy. And you got to really have that down payment 10% doesn't cut it in these major states.
It doesn't cut it anymore,
no.
right? It's 20 or 30%.
At least.
We're going into the summer season, certainly in New York. How does the rental market for sort of vacation homes looking?
It's always strong. If you're looking in the Hamptons, we've done a few rental deals in the Hamptons.
And those are like $20,000 a month in many cases.
You still find some nice cottages, modest 3 bedrooms. You'll get $8,000, $9,000, $10,000. Yeah.
And so you've seen that market come back because it had gotten hammered in the past few years.
It's very strong. We're selling a house in Long Beach, Long Island. It's a great summer house, 2 bedrooms. Such a great investment property. We're getting a lot of interest on it. So it looks like even Long Beach is coming back.
Okay, which is far to the west side of Long Island.
Yes.
Tej, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Have a good Memorial Day weekend.
Thank you, you too.
Ahead, many fib on their online dating profiles. Our favorite person of the day probably took that too far. You're watching Arise Exchange.
Looking at mainstream news stations where only you have a very small minority of people of color being newscasters and actually having prominent roles in the media.
In a newsroom in the United States, maybe 10% of decision makers come from communities of diversity. That's not right.
Well, diversity is important because the more complete the news is, the more accurate a picture you're getting of the world, and the more you can form an accurate opinion of things.
The vision here is not just to tell the main stories of the day, but to tell the news that other organizations don't tell, and tell it in a way that people like me, people that look like me, that look like you, are interested in.
Arise News.
Arise News.
Arise News.
Arise News.
Arise News, every culture, every angle.
Time now for our favorite person of the day, when we pick one person who grabbed our attention and not for the right reasons. Today, it is an Iowa man who decided to pick up women by pretending to be a local television weatherman. The Quad City Times in Davenport, Iowa, is reporting that Matt Wendt used KWQC-TV weatherman Greg Dutra's name so he could, of course, meet women. This is what Wendt looks like. And here's what Dutra looks like. We could see how this had hardly any chance of working. The brilliant scheme fell apart when the real Greg Dutra tweeted his real girlfriend and then got a direct message back from an unknown woman who Wendt had communicated with while pretending to be Dutra. Cops were able to trace the IP address to Wendt, who allegedly had used a city-owned computer for his dating escapades. He now faces 2 years in jail, though honestly, for what? I pretend to be Arise film critic Mike Sargent all the time. After all, he gets into movies for free, goes to Cannes for the film festival, and let's face it, is a babe magnet. So, for being lousy at online dating, Matt Wendt is our favorite person of the day. Next, if you're not in the car yet, you might soon be. The big Memorial Day escape on the roads and where people are heading to. It's Friday, so it is 5 o'clock somewhere. You're watching Arise Exchange.
I think news does make people put things in black and white terms just so that they have a dividing line between what their viewers like and dislike.
When they see a person of color, they either think that they're not going to do anything, they're either on drugs or they got pregnant at an early age, and I just want to say that that's not true.
It tends to reflect more the interests of the upper income people and the upper income interests.
Arise News, every culture, every angle.
Mainstream news has covered all of the issues of the world, which are like this, through a very narrow lens. And at Arise News, we do things different. We cover every culture, every angle. Our mission is to go to these places, to these communities, whether they're in Africa, whether they're in Europe, Asia, the United States, the Caribbean. And we're going to find these stories, and we're going to tell them to our audience. Stories that they probably never heard of before, and stories that they'll find interesting and engaging.
It's one of the biggest travel holidays of the year, with more than 36 million Americans expected to hit the roads this Memorial Day weekend, according to AAA, and almost all of them, it appears, on the Long Island Expressway. But it's going to cost a lot more to get away, a real pain at the pump. The price of gas is forcing many travelers to rethink their holiday plans, with the average gasoline gallon costing $3.65. Jeff Lenard is with the National Association of Convenience Stores and is joining us now from Washington, D.C. to tell us a little bit about what we expect. Jeff, welcome to the program. An interesting statistic that I have here, that convenience stores sell 80% of the gas in the country. So these weekends are very big to your group.
Yes, and if you hear the fake weatherman, he would tell you that our industry is very dependent upon the weather. We sell immediate consumption, and we heard from consumers that the brutal winter makes them more likely to travel this summer. And that follows along with what AAA is saying, that they expect very robust travel this season, particularly in the Midwest and the Northeast that just were pummeled by bad weather. They want to get out. They're tired of being home.
Yeah, and despite the gas prices, 36 million people on the roads expected. Where are people heading to?
Well, most of them are heading towards same places they have headed, whether it's going to national monuments or hanging out with friends. There really is no difference in where they're going. They're just going in greater numbers this year. AAA says it's the second busiest summer they expect since 2000. Our numbers show the same thing. While there is some pessimism in the economy as a whole, people are tired of the last 6 years of feeling sad about the economy. They want to get out.
It's time to kill the staycation, right? It's time to get on the road and go somewhere.
Well, we can probably kill that phrase to begin with, but you're also hearing that people really just want to get out. And particularly in the Midwest, 1/3 of consumers said they will be traveling more this summer because of the bad winter.
You know, with so many people on the road and traffic going to be what it is, does your membership group concern themselves a lot with the infrastructure of our roads? Because, you know, you look at the traffic out there, and a lot of this has to do with poor roads. Followed on, anybody certainly in the Northeast knows that these roads have a lot of potholes in them from the winter.
There are a lot of issues related to the roads and whether you have taxes or how you pay for it. We try to steer clear of those issues and really try to connect with the consumers. What do they need? How can we serve them? How can we get them on their way and get them back on the road as fast as we can? We certainly don't want to see cars broken down on the side of the road, spending all their money on repairs when they could be spending them buying snacks, drinks, whatever they would get at our stores.
You know, I had seen in the past that for gas stations that have the convenience store option, it's really the convenience store that is where they make their money. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah, that is. When you sell gas, you mark it up about 18 cents a gallon. And with credit card fees, all those other fees, usually make about 3 cents a gallon. So you sell 4,000 gallons a day, you make about $120 a day selling gas. You make your money inside the store, particularly sandwiches, drinks, anything else. But gas kind of gets people there, and then the food, the drinks get them inside.
Yeah, I was going to wonder is, you know, how many people fill up and then go inside, and how does your group get people to go inside? Especially, I'm thinking on these long trips, that there's a way to market to them to go into the stores.
Excuse me 1 second. That was a free drink. That wasn't one that we paid for in our stores.
That's okay. It's the holiday. You should take lots of liquids.
Well, in the summer, we actually sell more drinks, and about half of our gross profits in the summer come from liquid. About 20% from dispensed beverages, about another 20% packaged beverages. You add beer in there, and roughly half of your gross profits are liquid. So when it's nice out there, when it's warm out there, that really moves some sales.
So let's look at the rest of the year, because as you mentioned, people were simply not going anywhere in the first quarter because the weather was so atrocious. How does the rest of the summer shape out, and how does your group prepare for sort of the peaks and valleys of the holiday seasons?
While this weekend is very busy, it's by no means the busiest weekend of the summer. What we see is traffic in May it's even heavier in June. And then it's even heavier in July, and it's even heavier in August. August, it peaks. And when you look at traffic patterns, there's 2 or 3 weekends in August that are the heaviest of the year. And the difference between January and August is about 10% in terms of increase in travel. Doesn't sound like much, but we don't have a lot of play in extra capacity in terms of refining and production. So that's what puts stress on the system, and that's what often increases prices in the spring when we have this transition to summer blend fuel.
And it seems like your group really has to make its money during a select few months during the year. Jeff Lenard, National Association of Convenience Stores, thank you. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Monday on Rise Exchange, it's our Memorial Day special because the markets will be closed, featuring some of our best interviews with newsmakers in the business world. Let's take a look at the final numbers on Wall Street for this week. The S&P 500, that's a record at 1,953. We will be back with you live on Tuesday. I'm Andrew Schmertz. Have a great Memorial Day holiday. Remember the troops. Thank you. Good night.